Tonight on Cox Forum.
Anybody who's watched a loved one progress through the stages of Alzheimer's knows that it's a very difficult experience. Here in Orange County, UCI Mind is trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. We're going to tell you what they have found out coming up right now on Cox Forum. Welcome to Cox Forum. Our guests during this first segment, Dr. Frank LaFerla. He is the director of the UCI Institute of Memory, Impairments, and Neurological Disorders, better known as UCI Mind. Welcome to the show tonight.
Thank you.
Also with us, William Edwards. He is all too familiar, as he has said. He knows far too much about Alzheimer's because he has watched his wife as she has progressed through the stages of Alzheimer's. We're going to hear their story tonight as well. First of all, very simply, Dr. LaFerla, what is Alzheimer's? Is there something peculiar or particular about Alzheimer's that differentiates that from other forms of neurological disorders?
Yes, so Alzheimer's disease is a specific disease that attacks the brain, and that the most important symptom is the loss of memory. What's unique about the loss of memory that happens in Alzheimer's disease, at least during the beginning stages, is that patients remember things that happened to them in their distant past, but forget their most recent memories. So the way I like to describe how that happens is that they might forget the names of their grandkids, but will remember the names of their brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm. What do we know now that maybe we didn't know 5 years ago about Alzheimer's?
So I think we now know that Alzheimer's disease is a continuum, and that it probably starts well before you get a diagnosis of the disease, probably as much as 1 or 2 decades before. And we know that there's a precursor form of Alzheimer's disease that's referred to as mild cognitive impairment, and that a significant proportion, about 50% of people who receive that diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment will go on to develop full-blown Alzheimer's disease within about 4 years.
Bill, tell us a little bit about your story. And you know, your wife was diagnosed at a fairly young age.
She was diagnosed in her early 50s. She actually was a geriatric practitioner.
Mm-hmm. Little irony there.
And knew, we're sure that she knew what was happening before we did.
Yeah.
We didn't really understand how this person was declining in ability to keep track of things, to know people. She was a very efficient person, got a lot of things done, and all of a sudden that sort of stopped.
Well, when did you first notice? And how much before the actual diagnosis did you start to suspect something was going on?
A couple of years. Now I've gone back and I can see that it probably was as many as 5 years before, but about 2 or 3 years before. And I knew there was something wrong, and it was very difficult to get her to admit it, even though she knew exactly what was going on.
Oh, really? And that must have been very scary for her, though.
Oh, for her it must have been horrible, yes.
Yeah. Now, is that, and obviously, as we mentioned, this was a fairly young diagnosis, but in terms of sort of the progression, is that a fairly normal sort of?
It's not unheard of for someone to get the disease that early in life. It's generally pretty rare. Those kind of cases we refer to as early onset, which is defined as any cases that begin before the age of 65. Most Alzheimer's cases begin what we describe as late onset after age 65. And age is certainly the most significant risk factor for the disease. So it turns out that 5% of the population over 65 is afflicted, and that number doubles every 5 years. So if we do the math, that means 1 out of every 20 people over 65 have the disease, 1 out of every 10 people over the age of 70, 1 out of every 5 people over the age of 75, and 1 out of every 2 to 3 people over the age of 80 to 85. And so essentially half of the population over 85 suffers from the disease.
So extrapolate that out. How many people does that mean here in Orange County?
So in Orange County, we estimate that there are about 75,000 people right now that are afflicted with Alzheimer's disease. Over the next 15 years or so, Orange County is going to be essentially tied with San Diego County for the dubious honor of being ranked second in the state in terms of having the most number of dementia, Alzheimer's cases. LA County will be first, and Orange County and San Diego will have about 92,000 cases each.
Wow. Bill, talk about, you obviously, you said that it took a couple of years before you figured out what was going on. Was it just hard to find somebody to make that diagnosis? Is it?
It's very hard to find because typically your family doctor doesn't really know what this is all about because that's not their specialty. And we were very lucky because we were, I was actually getting executive medicals every year, physicals every year at UCI, and decided that I was going to actually trick my wife into going to get a physical, knowing that she couldn't really do all the motor skills and that sort of thing. And sure enough, that was when she finally admitted to the doctor that's the head of the executive healthcare group that there was a problem. And then we were referred down into what's now UCI Mind, 'cause it's been a while since this happened. And went through all the testing, extensive testing, to determine exactly where we were in the disease and which type of Alzheimer, which type of dementia there was, and what was the best path to prolong a good quality of life.
Okay, doctor, if this is so prevalent, why is it so hard to find a doctor who can recognize what's going on?
I think a lot of people get confused and they tend to lump all of these disorders as just being a dementia, and they stop the diagnosis at that point. They really don't probe further to distinguish what type of dementia it is. And the way I like to describe it is dementia is a broad umbrella term in much the same way that cancer is a broad umbrella term. And if you tell someone that you have dementia without determining what type of disease that has, it's like someone telling you you have cancer without telling you whether or not you have skin cancer or lung cancer. And you could easily imagine that if someone had breast cancer, they wouldn't want a drug that was used to treat prostate cancer necessarily. And the same thing applies for the dementias. There are many types of dementias. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type, but it's not the only type. There are other types such as vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia. Some patients with Alzheimer's disease will have a touch of Parkinson's disease. Likewise, some Parkinson's disease patients will also go on to develop dementia. So understanding what type of dementia you have is critical for making sure that you get the best possible care. Not the least of which is because some of the drugs that are useful for one type of dementia could be quite detrimental for another.
One of the things that you have done is to create a foundation in the name of your wife. Talk about that foundation. What you do.
Well, we have a tremendous amount of friends. We've been lucky to live all over the world, and we have friends all over the world, and business associates for myself. And everybody, when they found out Nancy had this disease, was wondering how they could help. What could they do? And there's a lot of discussion about Alzheimer's out there, but there's not a lot of focus about where things are being done, not necessarily to find a vaccine, but just, as we found over the years, to prolong a good quality of life. So you have time, okay? And so I decided, my wife, myself and my daughters decided to form a foundation that would focus any money that came into us into this type of organization, because we found that they fine-tuned the medication Nancy got, and it really did prolong the time when she was fully with us. And that's one of the things I know the doctors group is working on, is that we need to find a vaccine. You know, I have a 32-year-old daughter that I want you to find that vaccine before she gets old enough. But if someone gets it, the idea of prolonging the good quality of life before they decline is so important and so powerful to us. And we've been very lucky that so many people have now have given money to our foundation, which goes directly to one place. We're really sort of funneling it. You know, there's lots of different places that are doing research, but we have a personal experience here that everybody knows about, and we would think that's pretty important.
What's your website?
It's called nancyslegacy.org.
Very good.
nancyslegacy.org.
And your website?
Mind.uci.edu.
Thanks both for being with us. When we come back, we're going to be hearing about how you can also help support UCI Mind and some of the things they're doing there. Don't go away. About 75,000 of those 5.3 million folks who have Alzheimer's disease live right here in Orange County. Orange County is also home for UCI Mind, one of the leading institutes that is trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's, and in the meantime trying to improve the lives of those who are affected by the disease. We have with us during this segment the former director of the Alzheimer's Association of Orange County, and she is currently the director of Development and Donor Stewardship for UCI Mind. Linda Scheck, welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you.
We promised people that we would tell them how they can help UCI Mind. You have an event that does just that.
Yes, we do. And for a disease that's so overwhelmingly difficult, traumatic, and burdensome for families and the community, the team that's come together to put together Time of Your Life for March the 10th is a very positive, upbeat group. They want to make a difference. So on March the 10th, we're going to transform the private center club in by South Coast Plaza, to do an extreme makeover for it and to take it back to the 1960s. That's the time when a lot of the people who are at risk now for developing Alzheimer's disease were teens and young in their early 20s, and they didn't know that that disease might be in their future. So we said, let's look at the 60s, all that time of fun. We're going to transform the rooms into the British Invasion, Supper Club, Motown, Surf's Up, TV Land, and Futurama. So when the guests who are going to pay $200 each for this event, with sponsorships still
out there,
yeah, hopefully coming in, we will. Our goal is to raise more than $100,000 net for our research at UCI Mind, and a good time is going to be had by all. There'll be dancing, food, and a chance to go through all of these rooms and see all kinds of memorabilia of the 60s.
Now, how can people get tickets, first of all, for this?
Well, they can go to our website, mind.uci.edu. Information will be available there, or they can call my number, 949-824-3251. And I'd be happy to talk to them about sponsorships and getting tickets now.
Why is that so important to get this kind of private support for an organization?
Well,
like
the
UCI
funding at the national and state level is shrinking. It's gone down, as Dr. LaFerla may have indicated, tremendously in the last 5 or 10 years. Only 1 out of 8 applications for funding at the research level at the NIH is accepted. And we find that we really want to go to the community that's here in Orange County, the businesses and donor corporate sponsors, to say it's time for us to step up and raise the funds. The dollars will be spent here in Orange County. The researchers will do the work here. And there's so much promising research available that some of the out-of-the-box studies that are being encouraged that we need funding for would never be funded by these major federal grants. We need people to say, I'll give you a small amount to get going and see where it takes us, because we need out-of-the-box thinking to find a cure.
And one of the things, as we heard during the first segment, UCI Mind doesn't operate in the abstract. They're not just working with people around the country, they're actually helping people here in Orange County deal with the disease.
The thing I love to share about UCI Mind that I don't think everyone knows is the bench scientists who are working on research at the cellular level, stem cell research, and working with mice and that kind of thing, can be translated right across to our clinic, the clinic where Bill Edwards' wife was assessed. And they can do clinical trials, involve them in peer studies that will let the people try to see if a treatment might work, if nothing else is available for them. And a lot of the people who go through those programs are very interested in doing that for science, and so their children will.
It seems to me when you're in that situation and watching a loved one go through that, and we'll talk about your personal experience as well, you really are looking for something that can give you some hope, and not just a diagnosis, but some hope that there might be something you can do for them.
Yes, and I think that's the fear so many people have, They don't want to get a diagnosis because they think, well, there's nothing I can do. There's a lot you can do. First of all, if you get a diagnosis early, you can also set your financial affairs in order. You can do your legal planning and all of that a lot of people don't consider a value. It's very important. And then you can participate in clinical trials. You can try some of the medications that work better before the disease process has gone along. For instance, when you wait 2 or 3 years and then you get the assessment, maybe you go around another couple years before you finally get the right answer. Precious time is wasted, and the disease has progressed when the treatments that are available aren't as successful.
Now, you personally got involved with this, as many people do, because of something that happened right in your family.
Yes. My father-in-law developed the disease, and we didn't even know a thing about it at the time, and it was in the 80s, and we used humor and love and support and lost him. And that's when I went to work for the association, helping caregivers. And then when I left the association, I came to work for UCI to provide donor stewardship, to encourage people to think about philanthropic gifts to fund research. And now my mother has the disease, and we're coping with that. The cost is tremendous for the care. I want a cure for my children and my grandchildren.
Talk about that whole process for your mother, because I mean, it's so many people will unfortunately go through that same situation. I mean, as we heard, the scope of this disease is just huge here in Orange County. Tell us about what you have done, as somebody who's sort of on the inside.
On the inside, intellectually, I've given talks. I've told people how to behave when little techniques that you can try. And then when it's your own mother, all that goes out the window. I remember there was a time when my father was ill, and I'm blessed to have both parents still living in the house I grew up in. My father was ill and hospitalized, so we had to have my mother stay in a care facility. And she said, "What are you doing to me? Why are you putting me here? Why are you doing this?" And it broke my heart. But it was for her own good, of course. And so those are the kinds of human trials that I do not want to have other people go through. And she still fortunately recognizes me, but she doesn't recognize the grandchildren, and that's very sad.
It must be very, very hard, particularly again because you do sort of, like I said, have sort of this inside track at UCI. Might say, well, if anybody could get help, it would be you.
Yes.
But there is a way, obviously, that people can help out, as you mentioned. Besides this event, what are some of the things that people can do?
Well, we have a lot of opportunities for people to support for instance, the out-of-the-box research that we're talking about, but small donations, individual donations, if they'd like to do it online through the university website, that maybe somebody would like to fund adopt a scientist, and that would allow the funding that we have that's becoming more and more limited to be used to allow that scientist to do the research that he would like to do or she would like to do to take it to the next level. There are we have white papers of ideas that the researchers are champing at the bit to do.
And again, where can people get more information?
UCI Mind is available at mind.uci.edu for the Time of Your Life event and to donate to the Orange County's only federal and state funded research institute.
Very good. Thanks so much for being with us
Thank
tonight
you.
and sharing what you guys are doing at UCI Mind and your own story as well.
Yes.
Don't go away. We'll be right back with more here on Coxville. Welcome back to Cox Forum. I want to introduce you to Linda Scheck. She is from University High School, which is pretty cool in and to itself, but she has also won a big competition this year designing a t-shirt. We're going to find out about that. But big deal is you are in university's band, aren't you?
Yeah, it's called the Marching Children Regiment, and we perform at football games, and we also have a competitive field show in the fall, and we go to competitions. Basically, it's we play music while making formations, and we practice that for half the year, and we perform that at half shows at football games and competitions too.
For people who don't understand this, I mean, playing band is not just going and sitting in a room for like 45 minutes in the middle of school. When does your season start in terms of practice?
In probably late August, and for about 2 weeks we rehearse from like 8 in the morning to 5 in the evening, and it's like nonstop in the sun the whole day, and we bring like whole jugs of water. It's kind of a sport if you think about it.
It's very much a sport.
Yeah.
You know, those of us who know people who play baseball, they have, football, they have Hell Week, you know. But the football players, they practice for a couple hours in the morning, take a break, couple hours in the afternoon, take a break. You guys are there the whole day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we've put our show together through the whole 2 weeks, and we not only practice playing the music, but also marching while doing that. So it's kind of juggling a lot of balls at once, and so we have to not just be good at each individual thing, but put them all together to have a cohesive show.
So what do you play? What's your instrument?
I play the baritone.
Yeah.
It's bigger than a trumpet, but smaller than a tuba.
Bigger than a trumpet, smaller than a tuba.
Yeah.
Now, how did you pick that up? What did you
Well, I played the trombone before, but this year my teacher, Mr. Hedden, he wanted us to play baritone because it was, you know, drum corps? Well, that's characteristic of drum corps. They have a lot of baritones and French horns.
Wow. So you went from going from first of all, I want to know how you got started playing trombone, because that's not something that's usually associated with girls.
Well, in I think middle school, I played the flute, and there were a lot of flute players, and I just typical.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just try something new, and took up the trombone because we needed some players, and then from there, I played baritone for a marching band.
That's very good. Well, let's talk about why you're here. You designed a T-shirt. Talk about how you got involved with doing something like that.
Well, every year we have a theme for our field show, and this year it was the jungle, which is kind of the urban and kind of ironic because it's based on Upton Sinclair's novel, and so we wanted to, it's like the machinery, the urban contrasted with nature. So that's the theme of our show, and so this year I designed the t-shirt for it, and every year we do it, so might as well enter it into the contest and see what happens, and yeah.
So what is the contest exactly?
Well, Custom Ink held this contest where you enter a t-shirt, and based on votes, they judge you, and they judge the entries, and the award is $5,000 for your school or the music program for us.
That's very cool. So okay, there's votes involved here. I'm taking that's like any campaign that requires a lot of work.
Yeah, it wasn't just my effort. I think it was a whole band effort because everyone got involved. Everyone kept reminding each other to vote every day. So I think a large part was it due to voting and everybody's involvement.
So how'd you come up with the idea for that particular design?
Well, since it was the jungle, I kind of contrasted the urban, the industrial type era with this is like the smoke, and it's in the shape of a tree. So it's kind of the irony of it.
Yeah, leave it to University High School to have something based on that novel. Yeah, that's pretty funny. So, so obviously you do music. Have you also been an art major or involved in that?
Well, I do some designing things. I I've done art classes when I was smaller, and now I just do a lot of graphic things. I design websites, for instance, too.
Well, very good. Congratulations. Have you guys worn this T-shirt around?
That's what we wear under our uniforms for marching. Yeah.
It's another sort of inside sort of a thing amongst you gals. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Again, that is a wonderful thing. And congratulations on not just being talented as a musician who can switch between flute and trombone and baritone, but also being an artist as well.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And if you have any questions or comments for us about tonight's show, simply go to our website, that is cox3.com, and click on the Cox Forum link. We have all the information for you right there. You can also email us at forum@cox.com. And we invite you to join us next time as we take a look at another important issue that is facing us here in Orange County, right here on Cox Forum.